966.
This is the 966, episode 59. Mr. Richard Wilson. Hello, sir. How are
Hi,
you?
Mr. Lucian Ziegler. How are you? How's everything in your pad?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. Things are a little crazy here, end of August. And Richard, we're almost to episode 60, which is very exciting for us. So claps to the team here working on this. A little golf clap.
And this is a golf clap because there is no golf in this episode. That's correct.
Well, we just mentioned golf, keeping the streak going. We got it out of the way early, so we're good. Richard, we just want a little programming note. We'll be taking just a little bit of time off, which is actually not any time off because we'll have sort of smaller episodes this week and next week, just as we sort of reach the end of August here. So yeah, we will be producing content, but we do need a little bit of a break. And then we'll be back in full force in September with a really cool slate of interviews and obviously stimulating conversation between us. So just a little programming notes for all of our listeners and viewers out there. And then obviously we have to start with the preamble of please subscribe to us wherever you're getting this, either at YouTube or on any of the 27, Richard, now podcasting platforms where you can find the 966. So 27. Please do that. That's pretty cool, huh?
That's going up like with every episode. How many podcasting platforms are there?
I don't know, but every time I look, it shows an increase. The other thing that's interesting too, Richard, is we now have listeners in 50 countries, which I saw, and that's very exciting. That's a lot of countries. So I'm sure... hello to everybody out there across the world, which is cool.
we need to learn to say it in each language. 50 countries, that's truly impressive. I'm not kidding. Everything's kind of humorous to me, but that is really impressive. That's quite a milestone. That's made my day. For sure, it's made my day.
Yeah, it's cool to see the numbers go up. I mean, we've said that before, but every time we look, the numbers go up across every platform. And it's really exciting because we did not expect this level of audience. So hello, everybody out there. We will be highlighting some of those countries maybe next week or the week after just to say hello to those people. But anyway, Richard, let's keep going. What's your one big thing this week?
My one big thing actually covers every country in the world. We won't do a shout out to every one of our 50 country listeners, but
not this week, but maybe we'll work them in.
So my one big thing, Lucian, I kind of feel like I'm in high school recently. This is the third week in a row I'm doing, in essence, a book report. 2 weeks ago, it was a 78-page Ministry of Investments second quarter report. Last week, it was IMF's 91-page Article 4 consultation for Saudi Arabia. This week, the War and Peace of United Nations publications, the 540-page 2022 World Migration Report. I think it's a problem. I come across, we find an interesting article or story and we, check the source material, do some research, and end up with a book report. So anyway, the 2022 migration report is actually really interesting, and I've never looked into one before. And this one is like so many of the publications we're seeing, just really well organized and with really top level graphics and charts. But top line findings are: one, there are around 281 million international migrants in the world in 2020, which equates to 3.6% of the global population. This is a small minority of the world's population, meaning that staying within one's country of birth remains overwhelmingly the norm. The great majority of people do not migrate across borders. Much larger numbers migrate within countries, although we have seen this slow over the past years due to COVID-19. Two, since 1970, the U.S. has been the primary country of destination for migrants. Since 1970, the number of foreign-born people residing in the U.S. has more than quadrupled from less than 12 million in 1970 to close to 50.6 million in 2019. Now, Saudi Arabia makes its way into this UN World Migration Report in a number of interesting ways, which obviously is why this book report is in the 966. The two data points regarding Saudi Arabia and global migration that are especially interesting are the first, in terms of the top destination countries in the world for immigration, Saudi Arabia comes in third with 13 million migrants in 2020, following the U.S. at 43 plus million and Germany at 4.2 million. Ahead of Russia, 11.6, the UK, 8.9, the UAE, 8.4, and France, 8.1 million. Second, Saudi Arabia also places third globally in terms of remittances, with 34.6 billion in 2020. The U.S. leads at 68 billion, and at number 2 is.
I didn't read the book for the book report, so I don't know.
Well, yeah, it shows your good judgment. But interesting, because the UAE is second at 43.2 billion.
Interesting.
Once again, yeah, there'll be a quiz. I didn't tell you there'll be a quiz at the end. So it's just, once again, Saudi Arabia finds itself sort of at the center of an important global phenomenon. We see it with energy, climate matters, regional and global security, finance and investment, and here with migration patterns. So in closing, a couple of quotes from the report I thought that was interesting. Remember, this is a 540-page report. There's lots of good stuff in here. Quote, long-term data on international migration have taught us that migration is not uniform across the world, but is shaped by economic, geographic, demographic, and other factors, resulting in distinct migration patterns such as migration corridors. The largest corridors tend to be from developing countries to larger economies, such as those of the United States, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Germany. And second one, while it is unclear exactly how migration patterns will be affected, analysis points to significant shifts over time as countries seek to invest in artificial intelligence, AI. These changes are likely to affect many labor markets globally. In a report focusing on Bahrain, Egypt, Kuwait, Oman, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, for example, researchers found that the automation of routine work is particularly relevant to migrant workers in these countries. In the United Arab Emirates, for example, more than 93% of automation potentially affects jobs held by migrant workers.
Richard, the 966 is now a book club, and you read the book report. Yeah. You read the book, issue a report. I listen, get slightly smarter. The listeners listen, get slightly smarter. No, this report is really cool. It's very long, as you noted, but it does have some incredible data in it. Just to add some of the things that because I did glance over it, some of the things I thought were really interesting. The global remittance market, the total number of remittances sent around is $700 billion. That's a lot of money going cross borders. There are a lot of startups and now publicly traded companies that deal specifically in remittances. It used to be Western Union. Now it's companies like Remitly and other businesses like that service this market. Really interesting stuff there. The other thing that I thought was really interesting about this report, Richard, is that on page 27 in figure 3, they actually break down the top migration country to country corridors. And Mexico to the United States is number 1 by a lot. It's just under 12 million people a year, which dwarfs the next, which is Syria to Turkey. That is fascinating. And then Saudi Arabia first comes up, I guess, 9th on this list. And the number one migrant source for Saudi Arabia is India. So it's the India to Saudi Arabia corridor. Richard, also when looking at this, I was sort of thinking about Nitakat and the Saudiization of the labor market. That's still a lot of immigrants and migrants coming into Saudi Arabia when Saudi Arabia is actively trying to get Saudis into jobs. So it's sort of interesting to think about it in that context. There's still a huge immigrant inflow into Saudi Arabia.
Well, there is. And I think it's interesting in so many ways. And in figure 3, just to go back to this report, one of the ways it's really well laid out is it will juxtapose patterns. So for example, not only have immigration over in 5-year intervals, it'll have in the same chart emigration. So you see movements from country to country, and you see that sort of thing. Same thing with remittances. Who's receiving them, who's sending them, and yeah, this was an interesting. So that the chart you pulled was interesting. That's referring to the migration corridors. It brings up several things. MBS, when we was talking about the line, not introduced that, but recently when he talked about it again, he laid out population goals, to have 50 million by 2030, 100 million by I'm not sure what it was, but significant, but 50-50, between expat and Saudi. Obviously those, I don't think he foresees that all being, laborers, but a whole variety of non-Saudis. and they clearly have immigration patterns that contribute to a large expat community. The other thing is remittances, and this is in the region in Gulf. Obviously, this is largely based on the Yallah system, which is an age-old system of how people get money home to their families. You mentioned Nitakat, but the Yallah system is another system I can see being significantly revised and updated and becoming digitized in a manner that it isn't now. Anyway, these, as I mentioned, Saudi Arabia finds itself at the heart of significant, global phenomenon. And this is one of them. They'll be dealing with migration and Nitakat is Saudization. There won't be, if in terms of the plans that Saudi Arabia has for itself, the native population isn't going to be able to take, pick up all the slack in terms of what's needed in the workforce. So the migration, the immigration population, I expect will grow and evolve, and we'll see more of it.
Yeah, we're going to include a link to this in the on the YouTube page. It'll also be in the show notes. It's kind of worth opening up, even if you're just looking at the graphs that are in it. I mean, I'm looking at one right now that shows global air travel over time starting in 1945, and then it just continually goes up until 2020 when the pandemic hit and just goes straight down. It's kind of, we all knew that, but it's sort of shocking to see.
All right, but you just caught the bug. This is what happens when you get into this report. There's a lot of good stuff.
It's like showing up to book club and wishing you had read the book because everybody's so excited about it.
Oh my goodness, this is as good as it was billed.
Yeah, so we'll put this report up there. We'll share a few of these graphics. The report is really long. It's from the UN. Richard, I think the UN Migration Agency merged with the UN or is a subset with the UN. It's in 2016. I had the note up here and now I can't find it, but this is part of the United Nations, sort of, right? Organization.
It's a UN International Migration Report.
Yeah, cool. Well, it's very comprehensive, very cool stuff. Check it out. So we'll have a link to that on, if you're listening to us as a podcast, if you go to the show page or wherever you hit play, there should be a list of things that say show notes, and in there'll be little timestamps. I'm sorry, I always throw these little plugs in there, but there'll be little timestamps where you can jump directly to a conversation topic if it's interesting to you. And that's usually where we throw all of our links in. So check that out. And on YouTube, it'll just be right there in the description. If we ever forget, we usually get a few commenters who say, where is the report you talked about? And I realize, I maybe need to sleep a little bit more because I definitely forgot. So very interesting stuff. Richard, my one big thing this week, sort of talking a little bit more about the 966. We cover a lot each week, and each week there's usually 9 topics. And one of them is a conversation or an interview. And then there's really 8 separate topics and subjects we cover. We have our one big things. We go through Yallah, where we have smaller segments, talk about issues du jour. But we really cover it all, the economy, policy, topics, both light and serious. The point here is really 2 things for the 966. We do cover stuff that isn't just at the very top of the newspaper, isn't just the top headline stuff that you hear about over and over. Richard, it's interesting because I got, and I sent this to you, a Google News update for Saudi Arabia, which both of us get twice a day. And it's always sort of cool to see that, comparing our own newsletter to it, because I mean, often, and especially recently, it's just 10 different sources of news items. And recently, once or twice, has been all of the same story. And so it's like, okay, so if you want to learn about Saudi Arabia, that's one story from 10 sources. What we're trying to do here is really, get to a lot of different stuff and tell the story of Saudi Arabia and everything going on, because it's just not really talked about. So anyway, my one big thing this week, I think is something worth giving a little bit of extra attention to. It is Saudi Arabia's recent conservation efforts, particularly in preserving Arabian wildlife. This week, Saudi Arabia's Royal Commission for Al-Ula, RCU, has announced the arrival of 2 Arabian leopards who were born in a captive breeding program. We're going to have some photos of these cubs, which are really cute. I think everybody could agree on that.
Yes.
And so just really, really exciting news. In February, the kingdom celebrated its first Arabian Leopard Day and is due to continue marking the day annually on the 10th of February to raise awareness about the endangered big cat. The Arabian leopard is a subspecies of leopard native to the Arabian Peninsula and is classified by the International Union for Conservation of Nature's Red List as critically endangered. So it's just something that doesn't get a lot of attention. I know that this is a very important cause and issue that is supported by Princess Rima bint Bandar, Saudi Arabia's ambassador to the United States. It's a cause that's very dear to her. She has a nonprofit, Richard, called Catmosphere, which is a catchy name. And last October, I believe it was, they announced the first annual Catwalk, which is a walkathon fundraiser for big cats. Catmosphere is focused on 7 big cats that include jaguars, cheetahs, lions, pumas, leopards, snow leopards, and tigers. Richard, you know that I'm a huge cat guy. I guess I'm a small cat guy, but I absolutely love cats. In addition to this, Richard, and we had seen this on social media, but haven't really discussed it yet. The famous London-based publisher, Asaline Publishing, just launched a new book called The Arabian Leopard, which takes a look at the kingdom's efforts in protecting its endangered wildcats. The book is authored by Andrew Spalton, a wildlife conservationist, and details the history and cultural significance of the Arabian leopard to the kingdom. The book is, I haven't bought a copy of it yet, but it's actually under $100. And for a coffee table book of this quality from Asaline is actually quite reasonable. You can go to the Asaline website, and we'll have a link to it again, another promised link that'll be in the comments wherever you're seeing this. Check the book out. It looks really impressive. In addition to big cats, Richard, Saudi Arabia is working on conservation efforts for the Arabian oryx, the sand gazelle, and the Arabian gazelle, all of which became endangered and near extinct as Saudi Arabia began to grow. And environments became challenged and these animals became displaced. So my one big thing this week is big cats, Richard. I think it's really cool that they're doing this. A lot of this is in conjunction with Yallah. They're really hoping to get the wildlife there back to as it was, just as they are preserving the monuments and buildings there. So just a little bit of a curveball, something you may not have read about, just very sort of cool work they're doing. It probably doesn't get a lot of thank yous around the world, but it's very interesting.
It is interesting. I would add in your list of endangered species is the mountain ibex, which you're trying to recover.
How did I miss that?
You had a good, healthy list, but I guess of that Arabian leopard, there are only 200 in existence. I mean, It was almost gone. And you mentioned the RCU strategy. I guess in terms of the whole area of Al-Ula, they're going to turn 80% of it into nature reserves. And that's not only for animals, but wild plants and animals and wild plants and other things. And this is consistent. There's a growing awareness in Saudi Arabia about conservation, and also an understanding that parts of their tradition have been lost through modernization and progress. Standard issue for any society that's growing and expanding. And the Arabian leopard being one of them, which is endangered. And so they're going back because these are animals that are, indigenous to the area, were. Mm-hmm. And I think it's telling in how they want to, move forward, that they're trying to do it in this way that is not only, sensitive to the environment, but also a nod to traditions and history for the country itself. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these big cats, they're very cute, but I imagine them not being fun to encounter in the wild, especially if you are anywhere near a food source that they also might be interested in. I always think about that when I look at my cats, that if they were my size, they would just immediately destroy me because they're such athletic predators. But this is really cool. And kudos to Princess Rima for taking this on. It's really neat. And it's been a consistent thing she's been working on for years now. So
yeah, she has. Princess Rima is quite fascinating, well beyond the sort of marquee, which is, here's a first, female ambassador and an ambassador to the U.S. at that. Extremely accomplished, but she has so many other interests, the Catmosphere being one of them. And she's such a natural for this show, and because she's a businesswoman, she's done all sorts of. She's she's founded all sorts of charities and things like the Zahra Best Breast Cancer Awareness Association. She's a founding member of that. Founded Al Khair, which is a social enterprise for elevating the professional capital of Saudi women. Just really an impressive and active and multifaceted individual. This being one of her, I think she's obviously very excited about it. She also does 100 brands, and she, this is 100 brands, Saudi brands. This is, and I think this harks back to her business background. She has done, she's founded a women's day spa, day and gym in Saudi. She's a founder and creative director of Baraboo, which is a luxury handbag brand. This is the top, Saudi diplomat in the U.S. This is all her other previous life, and I'm sure it's ongoing. 100 brands is again about identifying interesting and exciting Saudi brands. She's very much involved with. So anyway, I digress. But the catmosphere and the conservation of wild cats certainly fits with her in terms of taking up really interesting and interesting projects and trying to make a difference in these key areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, check out Catmosphere and check out the catwalk. I think we will be doing it this year, which is cool. That'll be my workout for the fall. That'll be,
do you take your cats with you?
I don't think so. I don't think they'd want to come. They sort of make the rules around here. And in fact, if one of them pops into the background here, then sorry about that.
I've seen cats on a leash. I grew up with cats, but as an adult, it's just dogs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that dogs are probably cooler. I don't know.
Everybody has their choices. All I know is when people say a cat is great, they say it behaves like a dog.
that couldn't be more true. Barry and Joe are like dogs. What's great though is you can just leave for a weekend and come back, and as long as there's food there, they will barely miss you. So I kind of like that, the sort of low maintenance angle. Anyway, Richard, let's get to Yallah. We're not going to have an interview this week or a conversation this week. We will have one next week. And then we may just only release that. We're still working on it. We're also trying to plan a little time off here. But anyway, so we're going to get right into Yallah this week for a little shorter episode. Yallah.
Saudi in a minute.
Yallah.
All right. Number one.
We've done that 60 times now, Richard, or 59
times.
Yeah.
All right. And it's been good every stinking time.
When I stop laughing, we won't do it anymore.
Number one, new Saudi companies law 2022, key changes and next steps for companies in KSA. The National Law Review reports that on June 28, 2022, the Saudi Cabinet of Ministers approved the new companies law, and it was published in the official Gazette, Al Qura newspaper. On July 4th, 2022, the new law will come into effect on or around January 1, 2023, replacing the previous companies law, which was issued in October 2015, and the law of professional companies issued September 2019. So
the law is not totally official yet, but we sort of know some things about it, and that will be, as you just said, released right before the law becomes into effect. But it removes restrictions on company names, now allows for greater flexibility on naming a company. The new law largely unifies Saudi rules related to commercial companies and introduces a number of new changes to the rules of establishing and the governance of JSCs. Some other things, Richard, these are really sort of major advances. We say reforms a lot, but these are advances for the private sector. And we're going to include this article to the National Law Review, which really breaks it down nicely into a sort of chart, so you can see how the old and new laws will work. This one's interesting.
Yeah, that link is that's really a major reason I wanted to see it in here, because that the article has a comparison of key provisions, old and new. And I think it's telling. So this new law is intended to unify, Saudi rules on commercial companies, professional and nonprofit companies, all under one law. I think it's interesting that it replaces new laws that were introduced in 2015 and new laws that were finished in 2019. You can see them trying to be responsive, trying to develop and install a regulatory environment that is attractive to investment, that eliminates hurdles to establishing a business, any number of things that a potential investor is considering when they look at Saudi Arabia. So it's interesting that it came so quickly on the back of these other ones, because clearly they've gotten feedback. Mm-hmm. Said, okay, those are changes, that's fine, but we need these other things. And this is, I think, is intended to really bring everything together, bring it up to what they think is the most accessible means possible and the most uniform codes possible, because they really need to attract investment. So this is that. I think it's interesting, and that's why it's a one big. It's a Yallah. Definitely look at the article.
Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit with this with Chris Johnson about this a few weeks back, Richard, just sort of in general. But it would be good to have him back with us when the law is officially published before it's enacted. But yeah, it sort of is very like you just said, to echo. It's sort of lean startup of Saudi to put some changes out there and then listen to what people say and then adjust. It's cool to see that.
Well, outside of any investment proposition, the first thing you do is look at the legal environment, and it's been a sort of little bit of a moving target. Mm-hmm. And so, this will, if it's simplified and it's easily accessible and it's consistent across all sources, then it's just going to be a much easier accessed environment.
Yeah, and an easier environment in which to invest, which is good. Richard, Yallah number 2. Salman Rushdie attack is called unacceptable to Islam, says Muslim World Chief Mohammed Al-Issa. Secretary General of the Muslim World League called the attack on writer Salman Rushdie, quote, a crime that Islam does not accept. In an interview with Arab News on the side of his participation in a conference on interreligious dialogue in the Italian city of Rimini, he said, quote, Islam is against violence and can never admit any method of violence. Religious and intellectual issues, including phrases that may read in full or partly as offensive, cannot ever be dealt with in these violent ways.
I don't have anything to add. That's what you want to hear. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I think as we've talked about in the 966, the Muslim World League has been the leading platform for Saudi Arabia's and Mohammed bin Salman's preferred message of a moderate Islam. And, it says a bit that, Muhammad Al-Issa was in Italy for, in a religious dialogue. He's doing a lot of these. A lot of Saudis are doing a lot of these, but he in particular. Mm-hmm. So this is the appropriate response. And it's nice to see. And I don't really think it needs much more comment, not anyway from me, but it's important that, a message of moderation from Saudi Arabia get out there in terms of Islam.
Mm-hmm. This has drawn a lot of negative attention toward Iran. Richard, in my notes for this, I wrote, I don't really have anything to add. Violence is always wrong. What happened is actually truly terrible. It happened in the United States, which pisses me off. I would like to draw people to a recent article in the Washington Post, and I'll try to remember to throw yet another link in there. It was actually an op-ed from Jason Reslian. I hope I'm saying his last name correct, about how he went to Iran in 2005 with Christopher Hitchens, my favorite columnist and writer of all time. It's just like a really interesting read. I don't have much to add to this, but good on the Muslim World League to sort of set the record straight here for this crime.
Number 3, Pride of Ukraine. Usyk beats Joshua, keeps heavyweight belts. The AP reported this past week that Alexander Usyk kissed the blue and yellow flag of Ukraine and looked to the Saudi Arabian sky as he waited to discover if he had honored his war-torn country by retaining his world heavyweight titles. 6 months ago, he was patrolling the streets of Kyiv with an automatic rifle and defending Ukraine from the invading Russians. I remember reading about this. Inside the King Abdullah Sports City Arena, the still undefeated Usyk lived up to his billing as the sporting pride of Ukraine by beating Anthony Joshua in a closely fought rematch to keep his WBA, WBO, and IBF belts. Quote, I devote this victory to my country, my family, to my team, to all military defending this country, the 35-year-old Usyk said through a translator.
This is such a cool story. It reminds me of the Vitaly Klitschko, I think, is the mayor of Kiev, who was a previous heavyweight champion of the world. Boxing isn't as big in the United States anymore as it was. It's still really big in Europe. What I think is really interesting is right after this fight, Tyson Fury started salivating, saying, And in fact, he announced today that organizers have 1 week to come up with a huge purse and schedule a fight. September 1st is the deadline. But he is ready to take on Usyk. So that should be interesting. He has said basically if somebody doesn't come up with a lot of money to make it happen, he's going to stay retired. But I think everybody knows that he's just drumming up some interest in this.
This is like every sport nowadays. Free agents make demands, or the players make demands. Yeah, Joshua said before the fight that he loved fighting in the U.S. In Saudi Arabia, and understood. Unfortunately, he's 1 for 3 now. One of the interesting, but it is kind of a fairy tale story for Usyk to win this. Obviously with Ukraine and at war. In an undercard, this is interesting. An undercard of this fight, two interesting things. One, an undercard, a British Somali super bantamweight Ramla Ali won the first sanctioned female professional boxing bout held in Saudi Arabia. The other interesting thing is this is all these events were held in the Jeddah Superdome, which could be kind of cool to see. And this is the Jeddah Superdome has a world record for a roof that spans more than 689 feet.
That is cool. Yeah, that was quite the event. I guess was it late Friday night or late Saturday night, but that was quite the event. There was a lot of history made in Jeddah. It was
it was a split decision, I gather, and I'm not I don't watch a lot of boxing, much less pay to watch it, but and I guess Mohammed bin Salman was there. It's a big deal. These are big events. This is a world heavyweight championship. 3 belts.
Yep, very cool. Yallah number 4, Richard. Saudi Energy Ministry completes legal framework for the rollout of EV charging stations. Saudi Arabia's Ministry of Energy, in coordination with other related government agencies and in integration with the private sector, has launched the regulations for the rollout of electric vehicle charging stations so as to ensure quality, efficiency, and the protection of users and facilities across the kingdom, according to a report in Saudi Gazette.
I guess according to studies, EV sales in the country are expected to expand to 1.3 million electric vehicles between now and 2030. Like a lot of places, the charging infrastructure is not in place. And this includes the U.S. The U.S. has, 400,000 EVs were sold in 2021, but there are we only have 6,000 DC fast electric charging stations in the U.S. And obviously there are 48,000 charging stations of all kinds, but in terms of fast charging.
Right.
I thought this was interesting in the sense that, they're trying to look ahead. Also, I think it's interesting. We've done a couple comments recently on the Research Development and Innovation Authority, which is trying to organize and coordinate different entities as they delve into research or innovation, any kind of projects or initiatives. Try not to have things conflict or overlap or duplicate. When we were talking with Dr. Saad Al-Shahrani, Deputy Minister of Investment, the Ministry of Investment is going to introduce a new program that will do the same thing with investment promotion. So, your people know what other ministries are doing, and they're not duplicating efforts. This EV team was interesting because it had Ministry of Municipal and Rural Affairs, Ministry of Transport and Logistics, Ministry of Commerce, Water and Electricity, Saudi Standards, Saudi Energy and Efficiency Center, Saudi Electric Company, King Abdullah Petroleum Studies. Trying to bring together everybody who might be involved with this to get it right and do the rollout. Now, did you do any research? I looked to try and see how many EV stations currently exist in Saudi Arabia. I didn't.
What's the status?
I couldn't find any reliable numbers. They ranged all the way from 18 to larger numbers. I guess Electromin, which is the sister to Petromin, has engaged with ABB E-Mobility, which is a Swiss firm, to put in 100 EV chargers at Electromin stations all around the country. But anyway, it's very early in the process, and again, like the U.S. and many other countries, it's well behind what is expected to be the growth curve for actual electric vehicles on the road.
Yeah, I would assume that a lot of the EVs that are in Saudi Arabia now, and I assume that number is fairly modest, but I assume that a lot of those are charged at home because it's still very novel. Richard, I saw this yesterday, but California in the United States here is about to require 35% of automakers' new sales to be zero emission vehicles in 2026. That's a lot. I mean, especially with the charging infrastructure not in place. What's interesting too is there's the issue of having enough charging stations, and then there's the issue of how those charging stations are powered. Because if coal is powering or whatever oil are powering these charging stations, it's not terribly green or zero emission. So it's a huge change, and you can see that in all of these new, I should say, existing automakers that are now changing and embracing electric vehicles, but it's taking them half a decade or longer to produce their first electric car because there's just a lot that changes. There's a lot of legacy stuff that you got to get rid of. So
agreed, and you got to make the commitment, and California has. I mean, one of the interesting things about EV charging outlets, so they're close to about 115,000 in the U.S. 41,000 plus of those are in California.
That's good.
So I mean, California is leading the way, and they'll start seeing real results if with those mandates, 30% by 2026, and it looks like they're well on their way in having an EV charging infrastructure in. You're going to start seeing real changes in terms of climate and reducing emissions, that sort of thing. Yallah number 5. Capsark, which you just mentioned here, sets new record in Saudi Arabia with 5 LED EBOM Platinum certifications. The U.S. Green Building Council awarded King Abdullah Petroleum Studies and Research Center, Capsark, in Saudi Arabia 5 Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, LEED, Platinum certificates under the existing Building Operation and Maintenance, EBOM, rating system with a rating of over 80 points. Capsark's facilities are the only buildings in the kingdom to have achieved LEED EBOM Platinum certification.
Awesome story, Richard. We had the former president of Capsark, Adam Szymanski, on the program a few months back. Just an incredible building. Really cool for Capsark too to lead the way here in Saudi Arabia. LEED certification, especially when you get to LEED Platinum, is really highly sought after by architects and builders, and especially now that we just talked about it, as energy prices are high, and wasting energy is not something any new builder wants to do. So this is really cool, and it's very good for Capsark. I couldn't find if there were other buildings with LEED Platinum in Saudi. Are they the only, or or do they just so okay?
Well, it may be it may be a new construction because this is existing building operation and maintenance. So I mean, there could, I'm guessing there are maybe new construction. I mean, this Capsark building, it was opened in late 2017, designed by Zaha Hadid. I mean, it's amazing looking building, and once again we're talking about links. Lucian, I'm going to send you a Design Boom article which has a bunch of pictures of the building, and hopefully it can go on the segment when we do YouTube, and also even with the podcast. It's just an amazing, stunning building, and it's fascinating to see that it's also hits such high marks in terms of energy use.
It's awesome. We're going to have photos of it too accompanying this segment because it's just so stunning. One of Zaha Hadid's most famous works, just really cool. Richard, Yallah number 6. And this wraps it up for us, which we kind of mowed through it this week, which is good. Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince inaugurates the Ruwa Al Medina project near the Prophet's Mosque. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman inaugurated the master plan for the Ruwa Al Medina project that lies east of the Prophet's Mosque. The Saudi press agency reported on Wednesday that the project will increase the occupant capacity and be able to host 30 million Umrah pilgrims. The photos of the rendering of this project are impressive and look really cool. Very, very modern. We'll have some of these up. Spectacular looking.
I did read the article and looked at it, and I think it's interesting. I also it makes so much sense. You have these major urban infrastructure, urban projects. You have Jeddah Central. You have the Riyadh Royal Commission for Riyadh City, which is just remaking Riyadh. It's not surprising that you have this kind of investment, these kind of plans. Again, in Medina, especially, it's not only urban regeneration and urban renewal and new design and that sort of thing. It's a way to promote tourism and try and maximize all these Umrah and Hajj pilgrims coming, and making it inviting for them to stay and spend money.
47,000 hotel rooms, Richard, are coming in this development. Some in the luxury segment. Open and green spaces will make up 63% of the total land area, which is 1.5 million square meters. It's huge. And it looks, again, we'll have photos of it, looks really modern and cool, but there's sort of a traditional flair to it a little bit.
Definitely.
Kind of hard to describe, but very cool. Yeah, I mean, this is, I didn't see a price tag on this, but I can't imagine it being inexpensive. And
that's something they're going to have to watch. They're going to have to pay attention to, because you can't make it all upscale, because you lose the middle class, but also well, maybe you can make it all upscale if there's a market for it. But I'm guessing they'll have a whole range of options, especially with 47,000 keys in terms of hotels rooms.
Well, and I was also talking just generally about the budget to do all of this. It seems like a pretty significant undertaking. So,
what isn't a significant undertaking in Saudi Arabia these days?
Well, you got to think big. You know what I mean? You got to shoot for the moon, and then you end up in the stars.
There you go. They do that, or shoot for the stars and end up on the moon. I'm not sure which.
Whichever one you're happy with, that you just are
or
in
end
the
up
arena.
Over the moon.
That's right. The lean startup. I guess that's maybe the theme of this show this week, Richard.
Shoot for the stars, end up over the moon.
This was a good one, a short one. We'll be back with the conversation next week, again, as I said, and then the week after that, Richard will probably be back to a full episode. If it's not the week after that, we've got a little time off coming up here. Be nice to get more than 5 hours of sleep a night. So we'll see if that's a possibility. But no guarantees, though, when you get your body into a rhythm. But Richard, thank you very much. Good one.
Thank you. I love our guests, and our guests are impressive and fascinating, and it's always an education to have them on the 966. But these are fun when we get to yap.
We just get to yap. As we've said from the beginning, this is what we would be doing anyway.
Yes.
This is an offshoot of our newsletter, which we've already plugged this week. But it's just, if you want to learn about Saudi Arabia, don't go to Google News, because you're going to get the same article sent to you over and over. Our newsletter is highly and expertly curated, if we may say so ourselves. So subscribe to that at sustg.com. You just do it right there on the homepage. Richard.
It's the go-to source, your front page for everything Saudi Arabia, and in depth too, back pages as well. It's a tremendous service, if I do say so.
We do say so. See you next week, Richard.
All right, you too.
Thanks.